And welcome back to Three Scoops Podcast. I'm Kel.
I'm Ron.
And I'm Rob.
Wow.
Cheesy voice.
Sorry, I'm Rob.
We, no, it's too late for that.
Okay.
Today we're going to be talking about our top movie peeves, I guess. Stuff in movies that we don't like, things that seem unrealistic, or little things that can ruin a good movie or a good series of movies, things that take you out of it.
There's so many things in movies that are ancillary, which means that they're not really pivotal. And some of the fight scenes and some of the other things, there should be a lot of that in there that isn't going to take away, you know? And there's things that when you see them, when they're done badly, it's like, that's all you see. It's like you don't see the rest of what's happening. You're like, oh, that was so bad. At least that's how I see it.
No, totally. It takes you out of the experience.
So what would be an example of that?
For me personally, with my little bit of a background in martial arts, when I see these cut scenes and there's one fight scene that's about 45 seconds long and there's 9 cuts in that 45-second long fight scene, that totally takes me out of it. On a contrasting note, movies that have been recognizing that, I think, lately and doing it better. Look at John Wick. One long choreographed, uninterrupted fight scene, just like the old Bruce Lee, just like the old Jackie Chan movies used to be, where it's actually choreographed and well done and well executed instead of these jumpy, 10-cut, 1-minute long fight scenes. I mean, that totally takes me out of it. When I can obviously see like a guy, I think in one of the Batman movies, in one of the rooftop fight scenes, he's fighting off all these unnamed, unfaced henchmen, and there's a guy in the background that takes a punch, but he was already punching another guy. That guy didn't even get fake hit to fall. He just fell. And it made it into the movie.
It was his time.
He just took a fake punch that wasn't even, like, if I'm punching you right now and then he falls over.
Oh, yeah.
It
was that good of a punch.
Oh, dude, it was terrible. It took me right out of the movie. I was just like, well, cool. You guys just killed my Batman boner.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I
hate when you kill Batman boner.
Oh yeah, dude. I did too. I was balls deep in this movie, and then it pulls me right out. A lot of movies
That's
do
the
that,
worst.
and I think dude, pulling out sucks.
It does. It really does.
It's literally the worst. But I think that, and
bad fight choreography,
bad editing.
On that same note, what I like to hate about those fight scenes is when there's like 5 guys fighting the hero and they're all just waiting their turn.
Let's attack Batman one at a time and not use our guns.
I feel like both of these apply to that fight scene in Star Wars: The Last Jedi, the throne room fight scene
when they're fighting the Praetorian guards or whatever they're called, the royal whatevers. Yeah,
right. You had bad fight choreography.
Oh yeah.
You had dudes waiting around, waiting for their turn to get killed,
attack one at a time.
And then let's not forget the infamous disappearing knife.
The disappearing knife.
Yeah, there was there was part of that fight scene where one of the guards had this weapon that split off into 2 knives, and so they were using that to fight against Rey. And then there was a part of that fight where Rey had been spun around. They were going to do a strike toward the back, but then apparently they realized that would have been like a killing blow, and so you see the knife go behind Rey. And then when the fist appears from the other side of Rey's back, the knife is gone. So apparently the person just dropped it.
Oh, yeah, that happens sometimes.
Or it disappeared.
Slippery knives.
Yeah, you got to pull that knife out of her hand.
Right. Somebody must have been in the editing room going like, that's a killing blow. And they're like, oh, we'll just magic pen erase that.
Well, and that's the thing, too, that's frustrating about some of these movies is some of these editors and some of these producers get paid so much money. I mean, think about the Star Wars franchise, owned by Disney, Lucasfilms, billion-dollar industry within itself, just that microcosm of the Star Wars expanded universe or whatever. How much you guys getting paid to have these continuity errors be, checked, and you guys aren't doing that? And if we're going to be real, if we're going to scrutinize these movies this much, as fans, can you not just deliver and make well choreographed fight scenes, make fight scenes that make sense, have a more realistic portrayal? If you guys want to use environmental factors, like, oh, okay, they attacked one at a time because we're in a hallway, for instance.
Yeah, definitely.
Or you use some actual battle tactics. I know another thing that I see all the time is gunplay. Okay, like in certain movies. Okay, I have what appears to be a normal 9mm. Okay, right? and the magazine within it apparently holds 35, random rounds.
Those are the non-California magazines.
Yeah, those are the non-California standard magazines.
Yeah.
But it's when I don't see a guy stop to do a tack reload or stop to do any sort of actual tactician work. I mean, it really does take me out of the movie.
That being said, I did really appreciate the gunplay in John Wick. I thought that was well done.
No,
what I thought was funny is
John Wick's acing all these tests, by the way.
Yeah, but what I thought was really funny, I don't know if any of you guys noticed this too with some of your other friends, like we all know enough about firearms to recognize the difference, us three.
Yeah.
And when John Wick came out, talking to people who don't know anything about firearms, it was so different in the other movies, and they're like, that's goofy. Why would you do that? Because they don't know that's actually what you do.
Yeah.
When you're walking down a hallway, you don't hold the gun out as far as you can.
Right.
You hold it in tight to your body so no one can grab it from you.
Right.
And they were doing it all perfectly. And now people are recognizing that. But at first, people were like, what's this guy doing?
Well, even some of the ways that they held like the longer rifles and stuff like that,
canting
that are more tactical.
and
Yeah,
stuff.
the
Yeah.
canting and the more tactical ways that they're holding these guns as they're going through tight corridors. It's stuff that we recognize, even just from training footage or videos that we've watched of, like SWAT members and things like that going in and clearing a building that's more representational of, okay, I'm not going to laser you with my gun, my partner, while I'm going in or out of this building. I think things like that, as well as some of the judo plays, some of the actual like boxing and Muay Thai striking that you see in these fights, as well as the jiu-jitsu and the submissions and stuff like that you see John Wick execute in these movies. It's a more realistic representation of something that could actually happen, as opposed to just like, oh yeah, I just knocked these guys out. Every punch I land knocks someone out.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, he's striking, the knees, he's striking groins, he's going for throats, he's breaking things, he's doing small joint manipulations, stuff that's a little bit more, in the same breath, fighting off 30 guys is unrealistic. And we're really splitting hairs between, listen, when I see my hero kill 30 masked henchmen, I want him to kill him in a realistic fashion. I mean, I recognize the fact that we're being a little hypocritical.
It feels more real than any other movie you've seen doing that,
it's
though.
More entertaining too,
Yeah.
because you realize the level of choreography that went into these scenes. You realize the level of execution on the part of Keanu Reeves. He actually went and trained with some real live black belts. He went and trained with real live martial arts experts and world champions to get ready and prepare his body and his movement for these movies. And that's super respectable.
Yeah.
Walking into the movie, having known that beforehand, seeing some of this behind the scenes filming footage for John Wick 1, John Wick 2, and now going into John Wick 3, it gives me a lot more respect for Keanu Reeves as an actor and for these movies as a franchise, knowing the level of detail that was paid attention to during the production of these movies.
I tell you, something else that bothers me in movies is like, you have some bizarre command structure stuff, some bizarre radio chatter type stuff that just does not seem realistic at all. I don't know if you've noticed some of that.
So, are you talking about like military command?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's one of those things where it's like, I mean, it depends on what kind of movie it is. Is it supposed to be like hyper real? Like, is it like a movie set like today? Like it could be something that's happening, or is it like,
okay,
it kind of like, give me an example of what you saw that was bad.
I remember the movie. Now I'm drawing a blank. What's the movie with Will Smith as a superhero?
Hancock.
Okay. Yeah.
So I remember he was in prison, right?
Yes.
And there's a basketball.
I knew where you were going with this. Yeah.
So there's a basketball that ends up outside.
Yeah.
Right. And so he jumps out.
He jumps out of the level 2.
And, right. and then somebody gets on the radio going perimeter breach.
Yeah. That's a real thing.
Oh, is it? Oh, I'm sorry. Can you give me an example of anybody who has ever done that?
Alarm! Alarm!
Of anyone that's ever said perimeter breach?
Yeah.
Or
perimeter breach.
Especially after
Sector
a superhero
7
jumps over the fence.
I can't give you any examples of real superheroes
is that the
correctional institutions.
Is that the?
I don't know. I don't know, buddy. I don't know, buddy.
Got a code 3! Code 3!
I don't know. I mean, I think that to me,
He's outside without a gate pass.
Sorry. To me personally, that's less consequential than the fighting and the action stuff, because that's more the meat and potatoes of some of these movies. But I see where you're coming from. I can totally understand where, if it's like Rob was saying, if it's like a movie that's supposed to be set in Afghanistan, like in Desert Storm, or if it's supposed to be during Operation Iraqi Freedom, or one of these these Middle Eastern war movies, if you've been there and you have experience in that field, you see these little idiosyncrasies that don't match up with real life that can definitely kind of stick in your craw and pull you out of the experience and make you resent the movie.
Well,
You-
I mean,
you
you,
can
don't
really- you
even
can really
necessarily
tell.
have to be in that field. I mean, shoot, pull up.
Well, you do
an
in
app
some
on your-
ways. I mean, some
Okay,
of the
yes.
pet peeves. What I'm saying is some of them were like you can tell the level of technical advisors that the movie is hired by the interpersonal interactions with the soldiers and stuff. You just see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like what you're talking about with the prison scene, or when what police might see in a police procedural type setup, like you can tell if they're having high quality technical advisors, people who are actually there or not. Where some people might not see that because they might not know anything about that, and it flows to them.
Oh, yeah.
Like you're watching one of those police procedurals like Law and Order or something, and the top-notch detective walks in and he just grabs the bloody knife and is looking at it
Yeah.
with no gloves. He's like, looks like we've had a stabbing.
Yeah.
Or whatever corny,
his
you know?
Batman voice.
Yeah. And he takes off his sunglasses and
Yeah.
looks like he'll be slicing the cake or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever they're saying. Neither of those were good puns. But little stuff like that where if you're just a common person that has no experience in that field, it might just blow right over your head. I don't care about if there's a person falling down from a punch that wasn't thrown. This doesn't bug me at all. I'm here for the whatever reason
Yeah.
I came to this movie.
What
For the pandering.
So one thing that I don't like is the unrealistic deaths or the easy deaths. So, and what I mean by that, especially not so much with guns, but when you're watching some of like medieval type things and stuff, these people with the one sword slash across their chest and they're down, like dead down.
Yeah.
And anyone who's seen any kind of an actual fight or participated in an actual fight, I mean, people don't just go down.
A weapons melee, yeah.
And they
Actual,
don't go
knife,
down.
yeah.
Like,
I was stabbed 3 times in the neck and I'm still throwing haymakers.
Yeah.
Well, that's not something that a lot of people have experienced, so they have no frame of reference.
but I was
for
going
real
off
life.
on like what you were saying before, and other people were saying it's one of those things where like they don't have to take it into account, but when they do, it resonates even more with the segment of the audience that has experienced things like that because they're like they got it right. That's one of the things I like about the Bosch series. I know we're kind of going to derail here, but the Bosch series on Amazon is a police procedural detective novels that they'd made into a show. They do a really good job. They do a really good job at the inter-office banter, the subordinate talking to the supervisor role, the resentment on some of it. And, you can tell who's a bad supervisor, who's not. It's just well played. And people
More
who don't know
realistic.
all about that, they're still going to be intrigued by it because they're kind of like, oh, this is what really goes on in the precinct.
Well, yeah. I mean, how many movies have we seen where someone's in jail or in prison and then the prisoner's just like, oh, I got this cake.
Yeah.
Yeah, hope there's not a file in here.
That
cake would have been scanned and they could never even get that cake. Visiting doesn't work like that. They wouldn't have left them alone. They wouldn't have done this. They wouldn't have done that. There's a camera. There's a.
The movie with the super buff guard walking down the middle of the bus wearing like a shirt 7 times too small, snapping his shotgun again. I mean, you're like, why is that gun on that bus?
Yeah,
It's like-
direct inmate reach.
It's just, yeah.
As far as the big buff guard with its shirt way too small, I won't say we don't have any of those. Those exist. Or even just normal sized people with shirts too small.
Yeah.
That also happens.
Yeah.
Or really fat guys with
or
shirts
skinny
too small.
jeans. Not you.
These are relaxed
Talking
fit.
about tactical skinny jeans.
Oh, yeah. Moving on.
Cool.
We're cutting that out.
Cutting that out. That's edited. That's edited. Listen, we don't want no problems, sir.
I don't want any problems.
I think another thing that gets me a lot of the times is forced or contrived like romances between people in movies when there's no on-screen chemistry between. That's something that I think certain people, and it depends on your level of experience with relationships and people of the same or opposite sex, depending on your orientation. When you're so familiar with something like the chemistry between a person, 2 real live people,
Yeah.
and you're so aware also of what is not chemistry between 2 people. And then the example that I'll always use is from the third of the Star Wars movie remakes, episode 3 or whatever, where Anakin Skywalker
you didn't feel the chemistry there?
no, and Princess Amidala, and they're they're talking to each other.
I love you.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and it gets everywhere. And she's like, oh yeah, I remember when you were a baby, and now I'm sexually attracted to you for no reason, based on no character development and no experience with each other. I stuff like that also tears me
That
out
was
of the movies
episode
because,
two,
like,
by the way.
huh? That was what?
Episode 2.
Episode 2. I'm sorry. Well, stuff like that pulls me so far out of the movie that it's hard for me to get invested. Okay, now they're having an awesome lightsaber battle, which is very cool through these lava pits. But the stakes are he's fighting to save the woman that he is impregnated and loves, quote unquote. But then that pulls me out of it because I have a hard time. Because I think of motivation, I'm like, yeah, he's fighting so hard. It's like when you watch Captain America, it's like, yeah, he's fighting so hard for the principles he believes in. It's like, oh, he's fighting so hard for the love that he has for this woman. Well, no, not really. I don't believe it because when I see you two on screen together, you seem like strangers.
It wasn't believable.
You seem like strangers reading lines.
And the level. I mean, we're gonna totally derail, but the level of acting. By Hayden Christensen was just astounding. I mean, and maybe that's just
astoundingly terrible.
Maybe that's his 10. I mean, maybe that's all he had.
That might be all he had, buddy. And I think he used it all. All of what he had was used there forever.
And I would argue that battle in the lava was not good. I mean, no.
It would have been better.
I didn't like the setting. I didn't like this.
It's over, Anakin. I've got the high ground.
You underestimate my powers.
I think you should do the whole podcast in that voice because I love it.
We'll love it. It'll be great.
We got Batman. We got Squealy Anakin. Who are you going to be?
I'd probably just use a batarang to take out Anakin.
Batarang.
Batarang made of midichlorians. But I mean, things like that, it's easy for, as human beings, whether or not we have experience in a field, whether it's, war type or police type tactics, whether it's safety and security tactics, whether it's interpersonal relationships, when there's things that are not consistent with our real life experiences that just take what appears to me to be a minimal amount of attention to detail to communicate in the correct way, it results in really tearing down what could otherwise be a good movie. It's
a bad conflict. So here's the way I look at it. So if you're going to misrepresent the way something is, and then in order for that to be the problem, it makes a bad story too. So like if you're having a prison movie, just to use an example, and you've got a guy walking around carrying a gun next to the inmates, and he takes the gun, and then they use that to escape because you're portraying that that's a normal thing, it's a bad movie. But if you portray it as that gun is not supposed to be there and that guard made a mistake, now you're showing this conflict like, oh, he messed up, he made a mistake, there's consequences to the mistake, instead of just portraying it like as this is how it is.
The system's dumb and easily exploitable.
Exactly. Yeah. When it's usually not. It's usually human error.
No, exactly. So. Yeah. That's like when you walk into a bank robbery movie and they hop over or they put the gun right up in the face of the hero, and it's like, okay, yeah, let me put the gun as close to you as possible. Hopefully this doesn't get taken away. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let me extend my arm all the way out.
John Wick it.
Yeah, so they can John Wick it and take it away. It's like, okay, you guys are contriving circumstances to make this seem plausible.
It's a forced plot. To me, the conflict is the glue that holds the story together, and if your conflict is based on stupidity, it doesn't flow well as a story.
Yeah, exactly. I agree 100%.
Okay. So let's talk about just certain things about the story that tend to fail as far as what brings things down.
Well, just bad writing. And I don't just mean that as like cliche. I mean, so you got to have that strong character that people can identify with, even if they don't see themselves in it. They need to understand the character on a basic level,
understand their motivations,
and then would they realistically do this?
Right.
So there's 3 parts to creating a story. Like the way I like to look at it is like a triangle. So you've got your plot, your setting, and your character. Mm-hmm. So those boom, here's your story. And what hooks those 3 pieces together, like I said before, is conflict.
Yeah.
So if you have all those elements and they're put together in the right way, you'll have a good cohesive story. And if you're forcing one of those elements, it'll feel broken. I like to use like a music analogy, right? So you could take someone who has never played any music before, and you listen to them play to like a high level pianist, and they're going to be like, that sounds good. And then I'll sit up there and start hitting it, and they're going to automatically know that I have no idea what I'm doing. You don't have to be a concert level pianist to know when you're hearing something good. You don't have to know how to dissect a story to know when it's broken.
Yeah.
It just won't feel right.
Right. Now, what about subversion of expectation?
What do you mean?
So
you can subvert expectation, and do something a little different, that doesn't mean you're going to break the story.
Right. I just feel like a lot. It seems like the trend lately is, we want to subvert.
Yeah, when they
expectations.
should be going more to what I talked about before was surprising yet inevitable.
Right.
Like you want it to be like it could end one of two ways, or maybe one of three ways, and when it does, it feels right. But you weren't necessarily seeing it coming. Instead of just like totally just like something out of the blue just shows up and it's just dumb, and then you're like, well, that's stupid.
Right.
It wasn't foreshadowed. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Literal ex machinas. I'm really not a fan of those in movies either, because it's like Rob was saying, when you're watching the movie, you have a good idea when you're watching a Spider-Man movie that Spider-Man's probably not going to die. But if he just goes and at the end of the movie he wraps up the bad guy in a web and leaves him hanging for the cops, it's
Just-
like, okay,
yep.
that might be fine for the first movie.
That might be fine for some of the tri-fail cycles, some of the progression where he's like, but to the finale, no.
Yeah, for the crescendo of the movie, for the big fight scene,
Yeah.
you're just going to do the same thing you did to beat the other three villains, the lesser villains in the movie. That's, it's not exciting at all. I mean, what are some of the things that pull you out of that movie experience? When you're watching a superhero movie, what are some of the things that make you go kind of, not cringe necessarily, but definitely make you take a step back and go, wow, man, they really did not serve themselves by performing this type of trope.
I think in some cases it's the dialogue. You get
Yes, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I mean, you get some things that it's like, who says that? What person would say that? I mean, okay,
don't
yeah,
like
some of
Sam.
these villains are supposed to be crazy or something.
Yeah.
But even crazy people don't talk like that.
Yeah, no, that's a big thing. Not to get too far into things, but when I write dialogue, I always say it out loud. And if you stumble on the words yourself, it's because in vernacular you wouldn't say it like that. You would say it a little bit differently.
Right.
Whereas like you write something out proper and it sounds like, well, this would be a really cool thing to say, and then you say it and it's like nobody would say that.
Yeah.
Like literally nobody would say that.
I mean, unless of course that character just talks that way.
Yeah, if you set it up to talk like that,
Right.
but I don't even just mean that. I mean, if the words don't flow right,
Yeah.
it's because it's probably not something that someone would say.
Yeah.
Well, there's a fine line too between your villain, your hero going, "All right, you cur, prepare to meet your untimely demise,"
the bad
Yeah.
dialogue
and then
there
also just
is-
saying like what I would say is like "fuck you, motherfucker,"
Yeah.
and then shooting him in the head. There's like a fine line between having something to say, period, just for
definitely,
the sake
yeah.
of talking, and then having something that's so
Well,
trumped up.
You want it to do more than one thing. Like in like writing a story is a little bit different because you always want your dialogue to tell the story, to exposition, and then actually tell what the villain's saying. The movie's not. You don't have to do it quite as much. You can kind of delve into a little bit of cooler dialogue, but it has to sound feasible. Like it can be a little over the top because it's the villain and you want it to be cool, the audience to kind of react to it, but you don't want it to be stupid.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're talking about. Is the stupid, like, what?
Yeah, like Mr. Freeze in Batman Forever.
Yeah.
Or nice to meet you.
Yeah. Stop, yeah.
Chill.
Stay
It's
cool.
like, okay, I get it. Like, this is kind of a jokey,
Yeah.
terrible comic book movie, but in the same breath, it's also supposed to be an entertaining movie. Like,
Right.
it's supposed to have a plot, and it's supposed to have an interest, and it's not just supposed to be 100% cheese. I mean, this isn't
Yeah.
a parody
Holy
necessarily.
rusted metal Batman.
Yeah, exactly.
What? It's rusted metal and it's holy.
Yeah. Kind of
National
shoehorned-
Lampoon.
why was
funky
it-
exposition
why would
shoehorned
anybody
in
say
there
that?
with a nod to the camera. I hate that too. Nods to the camera. I like it, like Deadpool, right? Okay, we're breaking the fourth wall. Hey, superhero landing, that's really bad for your knees. When it's a meta commentary and it's kind of self-deprecating,
In a movie that's a lot of comedy, though, too.
that's meant, that's totally meant to be like that. It works.
It does
and
work.
That's
It
totally
does work
fine.
like that.
But in other times, there's those. I don't want to know if you want like the nod to the audience, wink to the audience kind of moments. It's like that takes me out of it so much when you have the hero in the last second he's reaching over the edge of the cliff to hold on to his the princess, and then the other hand's reaching for the sword, and the bad guy's running towards him, and then he grabs the sword, and it's like, God,
Yeah.
that movie is that this little part of the movie is so cliche and so predictable that it's and cheesy that it's just awful. It's almost unbearable.
all of the
it makes me want to walk out of the theater.
When all of the tension in the climatic fight scene is
undermined.
edited cuts
Oh yeah.
too. Like we were talking about the sword, I could just see that scene when you were saying that, like it's cutting to the sword, and then it's cutting to the guy running, and then it's
the
cutting to the
princess,
princess over the
yeah.
brink. It's like, it's like,
Dun, dun, dun,
Yeah.
dun. And then it has music too.
Yeah.
So each time it cuts, it like
That was the-
bumps up an octave.
I know we're this is a big derail, but that was the funniest part of the Cable Guy. Did you ever see the Cable Guy when he's
Yeah.
doing his own danger music?
Dun, 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 dun,
when he's,
dun, dun.
when he's fighting in medieval times.
Oh yeah.
Dun, brrrr, brrrr, brrrr. He's like,
But that movie too is meant in large part to be,
total
and that worked in that
Yeah.
movie, and that's fine if it's that type of movie. But when you're trying to be a serious movie and you're still doing that, it literally makes me want to get up and walk out of the theater. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't need to see the rest of this.
Yeah, I
I'm
know how
already
this ends.
disappointed. I feel like I'm wasting my time. I get that a lot. I don't generally do it, but I've walked out of movies before where I'm just like, this is beyond redemption. I don't care what happens anymore, and I leave.
yeah,
And I guess big movie companies don't care. They got me in the door. They got my money.
oh yeah,
That's-
they don't care.
But at the same time, if you're trying to build a brand and if you're trying to have your movies do billions of dollars worth of revenue just from the box office draws, that's something that you need to be cognizant of, is these big movie companies. If you're going to just fuck your fans, basically, like you're just going to say, screw them, we don't care what happens. Oh, Tobey Maguire, we're going to make him the Venom symbiote attached to him, and now he's going to do interpretive dance and down the street and all this. It's like, fuck you guys. Is this really? We mean nothing to you? We literally mean nothing to you. You don't care. That's how I felt watching that movie. I watched that movie in theaters. I felt totally screwed by the company. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I liked the first two movies were fine.
I thought so
I
too.
really enjoyed them.
Yeah.
And then they're gonna do some shit like that. It's like, you guys really don't give a fuck about us, and it makes me resent Sony.
So,
For one.
how about treat the characters that we love with some respect?
Yeah, exactly. They're not just they're not just your plaything. Like, oh, and then what happens if you made a big poopy? Ha ha ha
And
ha.
granted,
Like,
I think it's
whole movie's
acceptable
big
for.
poopy.
I think it's acceptable for the characters that we love to make mistakes.
Here's what I don't-
That humanizes them.
Here's what I don't get. So, like with that movie or with the Star Wars movie, how do you not just take a shotgun at the audience and just grab wherever you hit, you grab some of those people to pull them, and you kind of run by some story elements. That's usually what you would do, kind of like see how it's going to hit. And when you're not hitting on any of them, you might think like, well, maybe this wasn't written right. Maybe we should look into the screenplay before you even waste the money into it. Because I can't imagine anyone who can recognize bad story elements reading that script and being like, wait, what? Wait, what? What?
Well, a lot of times I watch Joe Rogan podcast a lot, and he has some other comedians on there that are writers for different comedy series on
Yeah.
TV. And a thing that a lot of them complain about, or that they voice their opinions on, is that when they go into these meetings and they have a script written up or a pitch or a skit for these different shows or these comedy shows, they'll go in and they'll pitch them to these executives. And the executives, I think one example, they sat there and they watched 7 minutes of this skit, and they went, that was just 7 minutes of unfunny stuff. These executives, and they're like, that wasn't funny at all. And these guys are like, please just let us make this. Let us get it into a test audience. If the test audience doesn't like it, then we'll nix it. And then it goes to the test audience and it kills, because these executives, these people that are saying yes or no or having the final say on these things, they have no idea what's funny. You're not a comedy writer. You're here to make sure that the pressing gets done. You're here to make sure that people are paid. You're here to make sure, they have no frame of reference. Where's your input come from? You've never written anything.
Well,
I think that happens with these big movies
it's
too.
like this in business too. It's like this for me. It's like this for anyone. You have to know what you don't know. So if they're referencing something that you don't know about, and you're the business executive, and you're like, well, I have to trust myself that I've delegated the right people to do the job. And if some people are telling them that it is funny, and maybe you don't find it funny, but maybe you're not the target audience.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have to do that a lot in toy buying. I know this is going to be a little derail, but I don't know what kids like. What kids like these days. But when I'm talking to a distributor guy who's saying like, "Hey, this is our best seller," and some of them I've looked at and like, who would buy that? And then I was like, okay, it's your best seller. I'll try it, and I sell out.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to trust other people sometimes, and sometimes these executives, people, I don't think they're willing to do that.
No, because all they see is dollar signs.
Their movies hurt because of it.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like some of these little characters that they've shoehorned into these Star Wars movies. What are the little half gerbil, half
the porgs?
the porgs? Yeah.
which looked very tasty, by the way.
Yeah, but
The only thing-
which kids are going, I want a pork for Christmas?
Some of them were.
A lot of them probably were, but that was the only reason for those to be included in the movie. They didn't have
there
any
was no
story
plot.
element. They were like,
we can sell little stuffed versions
we
of
love to
these.
sell toys. Yeah, what more toys can we sell? Oh,
Yeah.
let's change the costumes for the Avengers so we can sell them in these quantum suits.
Porgs, good sellers. Camel, long-legged deer things, not so much.
Oh, okay.
Just telling you from experience. I still have those left on the shelf.
The crystal foxes.
I didn't see any of those.
But it's like in the Avengers, right? They in the in-game, spoiler alert if you haven't seen Avengers, they transport through time in these quantum suits, but as soon as they reach their destination, the quantum suits go away. It's like it literally was just in there so they could sell versions of Iron Man in a quantum suit or versions of Hulk in a quantum suit. They're literally there for the time that they're on the platform until they reach their destination, and then they just retract or they take them off. They just disappear.
Nanotech or something. Who
Yeah,
knows?
the nanotech, they just disappear. It's
makes cool action figures, though.
It makes cool action figures, but it serves absolutely no purpose to the plot. And I'll admit, they look cool. I mean, that's fine. They look neat, and that's what you guys are doing, and I understand that from a marketing point and from a financial sensibility point. But in the same time, as a fan, I see that, and I'm like, man, you guys are just playing dress up with my heroes for to no avail. For me personally, I don't care what they're wearing when they travel in time.
Matt, do you feel the same way about 50 or 60 extra pounds on your hero?
I think that real men have curves, and if you don't appreciate that, Ron, back me up.
Wow.
Dad bod for the win.
Yeah, dad bod for the win. If you don't appreciate that, then I think that you're being
I don't know. I don't know.
shaming.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, okay.
Can't all be as ripped as me.
Can I offer you another donut?
No.
have an
I think they're all
Asgardian,
gone. Asgardian body.
a fat ass guardian.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else? What else do you find irritating or annoying, or can you even just list specific movies? I think that are prime
Melissa
examples?
McCarthy.
That failed? Like, you mean as not being funny?
Just being irritating.
And not funny?
Yeah.
That's the worst, when comedians aren't funny.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's literally not funny.
yeah.
Yeah.
That-
You know what? She's
the
selling.
cringe.
Like Ron was saying, maybe we're not the audience.
We are definitely not the audience.
We're
I'm
not
not saying
the
people don't
audience.
laugh, but women have a different sense of humor than men. Obviously, they do. It's just a different type of humor.
Well, it's like I watch The Big Bang Theory and I don't laugh. I watch King of Queens and I don't laugh. I watch Alyssa, whatever her name is, McCarthy movie. I don't laugh. I guess I'm not the target audience, but at the same time, it seems like there'd be some overlap because I can sit down and watch an entire episode of a show that makes umpteen $1 million a season, and I get I don't even get a chuckle. I don't even, you know what I mean? It doesn't resonate with me on any level. And you would think that with something that's so monetarily successful, there would be some level of overlay with just the common layperson.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know. Humor's a tricky thing. That's a whole nother podcast on humor.
No, it definitely is. But yeah, I think unfunny, unconvincing portrayals is kind of what we're talking about. Whether it's love, whether it's action, whether it's comedy, you're trying to do something and you're failing in that attempt. That's very annoying.
Maybe if we're talking about something being adapted from source material, just completely botching it, completely butchering
Or
it.
dropping things things in lieu of something that's worse.
Yeah.
Like, it's like they didn't like this part, and then they did something that was harder for them to do and worse. Like, they didn't cut it for financial reasons or CGI budget. They just cut something because they wanted to make it their own, and they made it worse.
Right.
Yeah.
Something that I do appreciate from adaptation standpoint, when they change something, but what they changed it into made it actually better.
Yeah, that's good.
So
Do you have an example?
Yes, he does.
I do.
And it's going to be...
Alita Battle Angel.
Oh, God.
What a segue.
So there's actually a side character that gets introduced like right off the bat, and in the source material, the side character is like this old man with like a metal plate on his head. It's like covering his...
Like a Raiden plate?
Yeah, it's like this plate that's like screwed on top of his head.
Like a skull cap.
Yeah, it's like a skull cap.
Oh, okay.
And he's the doctor's assistant, and he does not appear in the movie at all. Instead, there is the doc's assistant is a younger black woman. But
Oh, hot chick, dude, instead of
No,
creepy.
a younger black woman.
But she has this attachment on her arm that allows her to do all these different surgical procedures.
The crazy stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was really cool. So I was like, if you're going to change the character from the source, make it better. Make it much better. And that was much better, in my opinion. You had this character that had this prosthetic, that could, it was convincing that, that person would be the doc's assistant. She has all these tools like right within her arm to be able to do all that.
I'm a big fan of replacing creepy male characters with more attractive female characters.
Is that the creepy male in you?
The ancient, the ancient one from Doctor Strange got replaced with Tilda Swinton instead of an elderly
And
Japanese man.
I thought she was fantastic in that.
Yeah, I thought she did a good job.
Yeah, I really liked all the cool like martial arts movements that she was doing. That was like.
Well, she's a great actress, anyways. I mean, she's talk about vetted or papered or whatever you want to call her, award-winning actress. I mean, she's top of the heap as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But I think you're right, especially in comic book movies or adaptations from different source materials. That's an easy thing to do, to go and attempt to tweak something in an attempt to make it better, but you accidentally, it's easy to take a misstep.
It's easy to fail that.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Easy fail.
Okay, so I think that's going to wrap it up for us today. So please make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed our content. Also, be sure to hit the notification bell there. That will give you a little update whenever we update or upload a new video. We have been uploading videos every week on Sundays usually. So be sure to look out for those. Until then, this has been Three Scoops Podcast. I'm Ron.
I'm Kel.
And I'm Rob.
I'm Rob.
I'm Rob.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
I'm Rob.
I'm Batman.
I'm Bat Rob. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.